There we go. All right.
I'm actually do.
Hi. So Sydney Miller-Milbert is here with me today. Sydney is a parent lead. Her family is active in the co-op. So we're going to do a few minutes of slides together and just give everybody an overview of the GHF co-op. We're really excited going into our third year. And we also want to invite you, if you'd like, to, you're welcome to either share here live or to throw into chat if you would like where you're located. If you want to add the ages of your learners, you're welcome to do that. Um, and what brings you here today, if it's not just to learn more about co-op, if there's something specific, or if you're going to have specific questions that Sydney and I can make sure that we address today, we'll do that. And our plan is to just do an overview, hopefully in well less than half an hour, probably 20 minutes of slides, and then really open it up for questions because we know there's a lot of information here and we want to make sure everybody has time to get that information. All right. Awesome. And then, Sydney, do you by any chance have a copy of the family application to drop in? If you don't, I'll grab it while you're chatting.
I can get it. I have it in a separate window over here.
Oh,
Sure.
perfect. So Sydney is amazingly organized, and so she also is better at tech than I am because she teaches
Let
many
me just make
platforms.
sure that it's the right one because I have a couple of links here from
Okay,
your,
perfect. And Janet,
yeah.
Emma, nice to see you here. I'm Lisa Job. I am the board of director for GHF, who runs the GHF co-op. And Sydney Miller-Milbert is a parent lead. Her family is involved and active. She's one of our most popular teachers, and one of her sons actually teaches in our class too. So we're going to just invite everyone to share and chat if you like, where you're from, if you have any big questions today, any of that. And as you're doing that, I think we'll just jump in so we can make use of everybody's time. Does that sound okay? Perfect. Okay. And while we're doing that, Sydney is dropping in the family application. There's no pressure on that, but the application does have a few of the hyperlinks that you might want to look at if you want some more information about the co-op too. Hey, Andrea, nice to see you. I'm Lisa, and I think families are just introducing themselves in chat. So, all right, Sydney, shall we jump in?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, all right. So, again, my name is Lisa Job. I am on the board of directors of GHF. GHF stands for Gifted Homeschoolers Forum. However, while a lot of our families homeschool or are transitioning in or out, a lot of families, I think there's 8,000, 9,000 active families currently enrolled in our Facebook groups and our Mighty networks, and even more perhaps that access a lot of our free resources. And a lot of families also either are in traditional schooling or have one or more children in traditional schooling. So we really want to encourage anyone who does learning at home as well as learning in other environments to get something from our organization. We're not for profit, which means that everybody who's involved in GHF is a volunteer. I've been on there for 3 years. I've been homeschooling my own children. Actually, I'm excited to say after 15 years, I am about to retire as a homeschool parent. My 16-year-old is a high school senior, and he is finishing his last year, and he's dual enrolled. And then I have a 20-year-old also, and he went back and forth like a lot of families do between homeschooling and traditional school. And then he went to a UC for undergrad, and he is now at law school, at a UC law school. I also work with a lot of families, both nationally and actually internationally, with my practice. I work as an educational consultant with homeschoolers and in school advocacy with Sequoia Gifted and Creative, where I'm a co-founder. And I'm actually a student again after being an attorney and doing the corporate law thing before my kids became homeschoolers. I'm actually studying gifted and twice exceptionality at Bridges Graduate School. So there's always a lot of fun going on. Sydney, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Sydney Miller Milbert. I have been involved with GHF for a while, actually. Sort of became aware of them in 2017, I think, but have been with the co-op since the beginning, so 2 years now. I've taken on a little bit of a leadership role in helping to get some of the classes organized and just sort of help other parents out. Um, I have a master's in gifted education, which I finished a year and a half ago now. Um, and I teach at CTY, Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, in a special program where I work with low income students in advanced math. And I also teach at Athena's Advanced Academy in different classes and with the co op as well. And I myself am a parent of two gifted kids who are 9 and almost 13. And like Lisa said, they are also part of the co op.
Good. Okay. Listening. All right, so the first question some people may have, especially if you're new here, is what is GHF? So I was just mentioning it's a not-for-profit or nonprofit organization. It does follow all, there are, I think there's now 7 of us who are on the board. Um, Virtually all of us, or most of us for sure, are gifted TUI homeschool parents, either currently or former. And a lot of us actually either have our masters or doctorates or in that process from with gifted and TUI. So a lot of research-backed best practices as we're sharing with families. We always share our mission, which is to empower every gifted family to make strategic, proactive, and intentional educational choices. And home education, like I said, doesn't just mean homeschooling, although a lot of our families come to homeschooling. They come to GHF because GHF is by far the biggest organization that traditionally supports homeschool families that are in gifted 2E education. Yeah, and so there's a lot that's going on at GHF. So a lot of families come to us from the Facebook group where there's always active conversations happening. But GHF actually provides a lot of services in addition to that, including the co-op, also including a free conference, a 3-day conference. Maybe it's 2 days this year. Always the first weekend in June. I think it's June 7th and 8th this year. And a lot of the leading experts that you may know from other groups are frequently come and speak in our group. So a few of us will speak. This year I'm leading a panel on culturally inclusive homeschooling families, which is going to be really fabulous. I know there's other very inclusive panels of different populations that will be represented in homeschooling. We frequently have Dr. Dan Peters and a lot of those other experts that you may hear about in podcasts and articles, all coming. So more information on that. It's completely free and virtual. Once a month or so, we have free experts who come in. So we just had Julie Skolnick, who many know wrote Gifted and Distractible, which is a book that's out there right now. Dr. Matt Zakreski, you may know, who just wrote the Neurodiversity playbook, and he speaks often at conferences. He is a recent expert, and so you'll find a lot of those names that you see in other gifted 2E communities come in that expert series. Again, it's free, and if you were to join the GHF Choices, which I think is a small other fee of $50 a year to support all of that marketing, then you can get all the recordings from prior experiences too. So, and then again, because we're not for profit, all money just goes back into serving families. All right, I think that's probably enough on GHF for now.
Right, then I will share a little bit about our specific community first model. So what that means when we talk about it, we talk about building this community of sort of like-minded, interest and strength-driven learning for our students, our children. And one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of gifted and 2E learners face, whether they're in school, they're homeschooling, or they do some hybrid combination, is that they just have a hard time finding other kids who are similar to them, who share their interests, who they can really connect with, and who they feel like they can just sort of be themselves with. And so that's what we really focus on in our co-op. And I think in GHF as a whole. Would you say that, Lisa?
Oh,
Um, but es-
absolutely.
but especially in our co-op, we focus on building those connections first, for our students, and also, of course, for the adults as well. So we make connections between the parents that are part of the co-op as well. It's not just the kids. The parents build relationships too, so we can sort of help each other out if one person is struggling with something that their kid is dealing with, and maybe their kid just isn't sleeping, and then you just need somebody to talk to about that, or whatever it is. Like, there's probably someone who has dealt with that or is familiar with it and maybe knows a reference they can help you with. And so we really sort of try to build that community. And we also have this space where we are, familiar with our gifted kids and our 2E kids, and we can feel comfortable sort of celebrating what they're good at without feeling like we're bragging. I know for myself, I often feel like when I talk about like my kids' giftedness, it does sort of feel like bragging. Whereas if you were to say, well, my kid's this amazing athlete, it doesn't always have that same feeling when you're talking to other people who don't get it. And so when we're in this community, everybody gets it, and you hopefully don't feel like you're bragging. So we all sort of feel like we're part of a group that belongs. And so that sort of feeds into the way that our classes and the co-op itself, is what it is. We focus on that community and building those connections. And we'll get into more about what the classes are like, but just keep that in mind that it's really about building that community for our learners.
Absolutely. All right. So, talent development is an area that I'm really interested in. In fact, it's part of what I'm going to be doing in my dissertation coming up as I get ready to finish that next year. So, a lot of families hear this new pedagogy that is, we frequently talk about in gifted education of the strengths, interest focused, and strength based education. And that's really becoming more popular in our community. It's something I definitely buy into and I use as a focus with my families that in my practice and in my own children. And then we have talent development. So if we think about strengths as being, those domains that our children really show that they're interested in, that they're strong in, and now they need perhaps a mentor or they need exposure to some experiences in that, or they want to collaborate with other peers who share in those same talent areas. This co-op is designed to nurture it and provide enrichment that is focused on that kind of talent development along with the peer community. So there are opportunities to nurture and develop and to explore and also to explore new areas. So one of the neat things about the co-op that we'll talk about in a minute is it's super low cost to take as many classes as the kids want. And what's really great about that is that they may say, I don't really know much about this area, but there's, no real downside to going and spending 6 or 12 hours with other peers and looking into that. An example that I think of off the top of my head is one of our parents teaches retro game design. And I don't know if a lot of kids know a lot about retro game design or game hacking, or I don't even speak the language, right? So, but what a neat area if we know our kids are interested in maybe building or they're interested in engineering or something like that, or they're interested in playing video games. What a neat area to think about talent development and going down that path together in a really fun and encouraging way. So that's really what I wanted to share with this is this collaborative learning experience. And then again, just to share um, different and new experiences too for them to explore. Yeah. Okay, so what is a co-op? So a co-op or cooperative learning kind of comes back through traditional co-ops. Sometimes families or communities will see it in preschool years too. You might hear of a preschool co-op. So with co-op teaching, parents, don't get scared. Parents teach classes or lead activities based on their own talents and expertise. So it's thinking about our talent development and sharing that. So this picture here happens to be, I ran a lot of co-ops when my kids were little. that senior I was talking about, who's now a homeschool senior, he's that guy in the front whose face is showing. And they, at the time, this was pre-COVID, all the families would get together and we rented out some space. And you see the parents in the back there. And what would happen is a parent would maybe teach or co-teach one class, and then the rest of the time, the parents would either go and chit chat with other parents or run errands or whatever it is. And by having that shared experience, our children were learning from others and having that same rapport. But it was also this community for me, right? To have my colleagues and friends and that kind of adult time together too. And so in this picture, I think they were about ready to have a Thanksgiving feast or something like that, that they were all coming together and sharing. But as you can kind of picture from here, the kids can also be at different ages. It's really asynchronous in terms of that. So if there is, say this was a feast that was designed for fifth and sixth graders, but we had an 8-year-old who fit in really well, more the merrier. So that's how that works with the co-ops. And then what's great about that is we know that there's a lot of online courses that are wonderful and available for our gifted 2E community. This barter system, or this idea of us sharing our talents with the kiddos, also really reduces the price and makes it accessible for all families. And so to join the co-op will be less than $100 or less for your entire family, no matter how many learners you have. We'll talk more about that and share that with you. But by volunteering just a couple of hours a semester, that's how we keep those costs down without having to pay for an outside instructor. And then in a co-op, because generally we meet once a week, classes tend to be enrichment based. So we tend not to have the math class that meets every day or something like that, but we tend to have those kind of classes that work really well coming together once a week. Yeah, and so book clubs, hands-on projects, we'll share a lot of the courses that are happening this semester and how they work. So
All right,
for
thanks,
me,
Lisa. So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit more about how the co-op is structured. And the picture that Lisa shared, of course, is an in-person meeting. Maybe, I don't know where you guys were. We used to meet in a library when we had an in-person co-op, but we can't do that here. So we're using Zoom. Um, and there is only an online component. Good question, Samir. I think that we've talked a little bit about trying to meet people who are close to us, but we haven't gotten there yet. Maybe in the future. So we are as a whole, GHF is all volunteer. There's no one paid on the board. No, like I'm not paid as a leader or anything like that. Everyone is a volunteer. And the GHF as a board does provide the platform. So they provide the Zoom access, the Google Classroom access, and the Mighty Network access, in addition to the larger Facebook group, which exists sort of outside of the co-op. And then as far as the co-op itself, all families participate in co-teaching or leading the activities. And as Lisa sort of alluded to, we have 6 or 12-week sessions in each semester. So it's a 24-week school year. It's broken up into 2 semesters and then 12 weeks and then 6 weeks. So you can sort of sign up to teach or lead an activity that is 6 or 12 weeks. And there are other types of activities too that we can talk about. Everything is all virtual. We use Zoom and Google Classroom for the student-based part. And then Mighty Networks is where we can connect as parents and adults. As we said before, this is really a community first model. So we focus first on those peer connections rather than academic subjects. We certainly talk and teach to academic levels, but because we have mixed ages, as Lisa said, we are asynchronous because we're a gifted community. We won't necessarily have like an 8th grade math class or something like that. There's a lot more sort of wiggle room, flexibility in our classes. And another interesting thing about having parents so involved in our community as leaders, as teachers, we have this mentorship aspect where we can really share our interests and passions with the kids and provide mentorship to them. And we've also reached out outside of our community and brought in other trusted adults to share their expertise with our learners, which has been really fun. There is a lot of flexibility, as I said before, in addition to the asynchronous aspect, we do have a lot of families who are twice exceptional. If you're not familiar with that term, it means that the learner is gifted and also has a learning disability or challenge of some sort. And so everyone in our community so far has been really, really gracious and compassionate to everyone. We haven't had any issues where someone has felt excluded or not welcome because of some challenge that they have. Um, and as Lisa said, the cost is just $50 a year for the first adult and the first learner. And then if there are additional children who want to join in, it's $25 extra. That fee pays for the Zoom accounts that we have, a background check for the adults, and then sort of miscellaneous admin costs that we cover. Did I get everything there, Lisa?
You did, and I will
Okay.
say too, the beauty of that too is that if any family finds that even these costs are prohibitive, by all means, GHF will help to support every family to make sure it's accessible for all. Yeah, yep, Samir, we're gonna get there. Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, very good question. So that sort of leads us into the next thing I wanted to talk about.
I mean,
So this is just a couple pages. Of course, there's many more pages. This is our course bulletin or course catalog. We create one of these every semester. This one is for the current one for spring 2025. What you're looking at is the cover, one of the calendar pages, and then one of the session pages. And I realize that it's really small, so you may not be able to read it from what's here. But what you can see on the middle page is our calendar. So you can see that we have 2 sessions. Each of those sessions is 6 weeks long. So we start a little bit later in January. So we have that sort of like warm up time from after the winter holidays into getting back into the school year time. That first 6 week session goes from the end of January to beginning of March. And then we have a break, a little break in between, another 6 week session, which goes from mid-March to the very beginning of May or end of April, depending on when the holidays are. And then we have a couple of breaks for Easter and Passover and those sorts of things. And so those are all planned out. We do that. We adjust it every year, of course, for the various holidays that change and just the dates and everything. But that's sort of what the spring semester looks like. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the session A, which is the classes and activities that were offered in those first 6 weeks of the spring semester this year. So on this one, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so on this one, we had a chess strategies class, and then we also had a chess club later in the day. On that same day on Wednesdays, there's this game design archaeology class that Lisa mentioned. We had this really cool virtual field trip series where one of our parents organized a bunch of different field trips. There was actually one today, not on a Tuesday. The schedule changed a little bit, but we did a couple of days with NASA scientists. We've done Smithsonian ones in the past. Today that we toured a California redwood forest, which was really fun. So there's a lot of cool options with that. And then as you can see, there are a couple of art classes here. There's a create, invent, design, and imagine, which is sort of that STEM art combination. There's a models and miniature course. There's an economics class going on, a speech and debate class. And then there was this interesting writing class, how to complain like a lawyer, where that was led by a parent in the group. I apologize for the background noise. A parent in the group who is a lawyer, and he taught the kids how to write a letter based on a problem that they were most interested in.
yeah, I think they actually did a complaint, if I understand correctly. I want to leave this just for a second. Can I add a few little tidbits here, Cindy, since this might be really important for people? So first of all, I wanted to just add one of the neat things about the calendar when we have those of us who are veteran homeschool parents set the calendar just for the note is it's intentionally set for homeschoolers. So a lot of families who homeschool like to kind of, start a little later in the school year after Labor Day, maybe run a vacation or two while the rest of the world is in school. And so we intentionally do that. I know having homeschooled for as long as I have, my kids often would need to just kind of get into it after a little summer break, right? We'll start with math, every day or whatever it is. And so the idea is to start after Labor Day intentionally once you're kind of back up to speed again. And then same thing in later January. A lot of families like to take an extra ski trip or maybe extended family or what have it, whatever it is, where the flights end up a little bit cheaper if you can, stay out a little longer or what have you. And so that's why we start a little bit later in each semester. And then if your family is like mine, we love when things begin and we love, as parents, we love when things end and we get a little break. And so that's why there's an intentional week in between the two quarters. I'll call it the 2 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, Monica. Let me just have you mute here. And so, just having a little bit of a break gives the parents who are leading things a little breather. Sometimes the kids need a little something different. And then once in a while, a parent teacher will have, something that has come up, and then they'll just re-lead during that week off and do things like that. So no problem. I think we all have lots of dogs and cats and kids. That's part of right our community. So for sure. Yeah. Okay. I see, Samir, that you have some questions. So let me throw these in and then I'm going to just open up, take your questions, and then we'll keep going back for the rest of the family. Is that okay? So with these classes, one question that we'll talk about in a few minutes is what classes are going to be next year. So what happened here is that again, back to that community first idea is that families joined, and as they were joining, parents would choose what they wanted to do and start to send in what we call the class proposals. And so that would be the next thing if you're looking at the family application that you don't need to do right away. But that was what was starting to come in. And so this schedule will change next year based on what families want to lead or teach. So you can see again, we use the attorney parent as an example of somebody who was leaning into their expertise. Some people do art because that's their hobby. Maybe their career is something different, but they just love the hobby, and so they want to share that. So, certainly we think outside the box. We have economics classes and speech and debate, and those kind of more traditional, but also things like the Minecraft club and that. So, and then I just want to point out the chess club as well as the Python class were both taught by returning tweens. They're both about to be 13, 12, 13. And those have been really successful too. So you'll see some of that on there. Let me pause for a second, Samir, since you noted that you have to leave in a couple minutes. Can we take one or two questions and see if they're coming up or if we can answer them off what's already been presented?
I think he had to go already, Lisa.
Oh, bummer. Okay, well, I bet he'll reach out to us afterwards. So, all right, let's keep going then.
All right, here's our next one.
Okay, so it's sometimes hard, right, when we're virtual to see what does this look like. So a class would look like this. And then, Sydney, you want to take it from here?
Sure.
Okay.
So we have our live classes, clubs, and parent meetups on Zoom. So it'd be kind of like what we're doing right now. We also have the Mighty Network where we have sort of communication for parents only. It's not a kid space, it's a parent only space where we have a special group for the co-op, and then there's also things like a professional meeting every Friday. There are the conferences on there. There's special events and speakers on Mighty Networks, all of that sort of stuff you would find there. And then specifically for the co-op, we do most of our let me back up. So there's a synchronous component and an asynchronous component. And when I'm talking about like the actual activities, not the students. So we have the synchronous component on Zoom, so you're meeting at a specific time. And then there's the asynchronous component on Google Classroom, so that gives a place for the leader or the teacher and the learners to come together when there isn't a live class. So the teacher or activity leader might post resources, they might post like a book recommendation or a YouTube video or any sort of resources, worksheets they might want to share with their students or class, whether it's like a homework assignment or maybe it's just an extra thing that was brought up during class that they might want to share. And that is also sort of the best place for our teachers to communicate with the students. And it gives us a place to keep everything sort of organized and in a safe, secure environment. We also have a place on Google Classroom that we call like the parent homeroom. And so we will post announcements there for the parents that they may need to know about an upcoming field trip or some event that has popped up, or maybe a schedule change, anything like that would be announced in a place like that.
Oh, perfect.
And then, was this me or you, Lisa? I think this is me too.
I think it was also you, but
Okay.
either way.
Okay, I can do it. All
Yeah.
right. So the co-op classes themselves, as I said, they are on Zoom. So it'd be very similar to this. Oftentimes you will see that a parent may be sharing a slideshow like this, but they may just have the kids and themselves on a Zoom camera. And just be chatting about whatever the topic is and sharing resources. I know in some of our art classes, we are sharing like our actual hands-on materials where we're holding them up to the camera or pointing like an iPad down at a desk or something so we can share our hands-on work. So each class, as I said, does have a separate Zoom meeting link and also a Google Classroom for every single one. So let's say your learner wants to sign up for my Minecraft class and the speech and debate and chess club. You would have three separate Google Classrooms and three separate Zoom links for that. Um, and then the other thing that I wanted to say just very quickly about Zoom, we try to be really, really accommodating and flexible about learners' comfort levels with Zoom. We know that not everybody is comfortable being on camera, not everybody is comfortable speaking with their voice, and so we like to give lots of options for communication there, whether they prefer to type in the chat, or maybe they just want to observe that day and save their comments for after class and put them in the Google Classroom. We just want to encourage everyone to feel comfortable and just sort of come as they are. And we try to really build that safe space where everyone sort of feels comfortable and is in their best, happiest place for learning.
Yeah, and on that note too, I want to say also with that inclusivity of learning differences is also that inclusivity of all those identities that our learners and our adults have. So this is also a completely safe place. We know the environment, politically is, its own situation, but in our co-op, we do encourage, if students want to use their own unique pronouns or if adults do too. It really just is this inclusive secular space where we all just support each other with however we come. Yeah. All right.
And that leads into talking a little bit more about learner differences. So in part of the family application that I put the link in there and Lisa talked about before, there is a place where you can share any special needs or strengths or interests that you want to about your learner. And that can be really helpful for your learners' future teachers to know what their special needs are. Like if you have a student who is just like really has a lot of anxiety, that might be helpful for them to know to sort of just like let them come when they're ready. Or if you know that your child is dysgraphic or something, for example, you want to sort of make make co-op aware so that we know we can give them options. If there's a writing assignment or something, we know that it's okay to type it or to use speech to text or anything like that. Any tool that helps them, we want to make sure that they know that it's okay to use that. And then there's also this sort of concept of projects versus progress. We don't really have a whole lot of, I would say there's not any graded assignments really. There's certainly an option as a homeschool parent to give grades to your students, to your children, but we don't really do a lot of grading in the co-op itself. We really want to encourage everyone to learn at their own pace and to follow those rabbit holes where they find them and really focus on the growth and the experience of coming together in a learning community rather than an assessment or a test or a project with a specific expected outcome. And then again, on the note of flexibility, we really want to, again, meet students where they are and make sure that we are providing learning opportunities that are good for the students. It doesn't make any sense if we just do things that, follow the standards from your state if it doesn't meet the learner's needs. So we want to make sure that we are offering things that draw upon our interests and passions as adult activity leaders and teachers, but also are of interest to the students. And so that's something that we can, if you're coming to the co-op and you're like, I just don't know what to teach, well, that's something that we can certainly help you figure out and sort of talk and show what was worked before and maybe what hasn't, to work together to find the best path for everybody.
Yeah, and this note here is about the parents and gifted 2E learners. As parents, we have these unique insights. And what's really interesting, when as I was building this, our past GHF president, Barry Gelston, had this idea and came to me because of my co-op experience, and asked me to work on this. And I have to say, I thought, oh gosh, we know that a lot of us had some difficulties, getting those accommodations with our traditional schools, maybe, or in other environments. And I was expected to, have to facilitate a lot of, questions or thoughts between parents and teachers or students or whatever that looked like. And knock on wood, we are at the end of our fourth semester, and we have not had a single issue when it comes to, how a class can accommodate or include a learner or anything like that. And I really think that it's because as parents, we get it in these intuitive ways, right? Even if our own kiddos aren't 2E or don't have that particular learning difference, that nurturing experience that we have that we bring to the whole community is something really special. So just wanted to add that in there for sure. Yeah, so first of the big questions, I know they're coming now as we wrap up the slides and start to open into questions. How much does the co-op cost? Because the parents, again, take an active role, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, the cost for any of those, for all of the things that we do between in that school year. And our school year, by the way, runs from our yearly plan, so to speak, runs from August 1st to July 31st. So if you think about anything that the co-op provides within that year amount, we charge $50 for a parent and their learner to join us. And that includes access to as many of those classes as we can help them to access that they want to access. And then it's $25 extra for the additional siblings, and that just helps us to cover the costs. And then we usually don't have curriculum or workbooks. We don't do expenses with families, with parents. So a lot of parents will end up maybe paying a little bit to get their own resources or their Google, or they'll use what they have, or, whatever that looks like, but it comes out in the wash because everybody's doing the same thing. And then we have supply lists. And usually, again, it's usually not textbooks or workbooks. It's usually more supplies. That would be the cost if you are in a hands-on class with that maybe you're in an art class and there's a supply list of paints and that you would incur as a family. And then again, GHF, we have 2 Zoom links that are paid for, and we use those and all the other pieces that we can to support all of this. We do a very pretty cursory background check for all active adults, and that's where part of that money goes through. We use backgroundchecks.com. It's not as inclusive as a fingerprint one, but it just gives that extra layer since we do work virtually with youth. Yeah. And let's see what we have. Okay, this is the biggest question we have. Do all parents have to teach? And the answer is kind of yes, but there's a lot of different ways besides the 6 and 12 week courses. So we know some parents have their own reasons why they're not comfortable teaching with kiddos, or maybe you're a working parent, or have babies or whatever else is going on in your life. Um, The co-op, the reason it works is because everybody takes an active role. So we don't really have the ability to kind of, pay an extra cost and drop our kids off, so to speak, like most of the other virtual online classes. That being said, the traditional course that we would really like parents to do is to teach this little 6 or 12 week course. You get to choose, you aren't put into one. So our hope is that everybody has something that they would like to lead for 6 weeks in any semester that your children take an active role in the co-op. So if your kids start the co-op after week 2, and you decide, oh wait, we're traveling in the spring, we're not going to be involved, or we're world schooling, you don't have to teach in that semester. But if your kiddos are involved, we'd love for you. We really want you to be involved too, and so we really ask that you do. So the traditional would be the say a 6 week is kind of your minimum traditional role, and that can be anything. So we talked about things that were bigger like speech and debate, and then there's things like the Minecraft Challenges Club, which I think takes a little bit less work, Sydney. Is that right? Than some of the classes
Yeah.
taught.
Yes.
Um, I know one parent had one that was like paper folding and origami, and it was more of a club. So the kids, they had different origami that they were doing each week while they were chit chatting about, I don't know, current shows they were watching or something like that, right? So there was a conversation starter every week for the kiddos to be involved in, but the conversation, of course, was fluid based on the kids. Um, again, Python, chess. I think a parent is interested in my favorite idea, which is a cooking group. When my one of my kids was in COVID lockdowns as a homeschooler, and they did all sorts of interesting crafts, and they would make cooking, so they'd have their Zoom on in kitchen, and they would chit chat while they were making their brownies in a mug, that kind of fun thing. So it's definitely outside the box, whatever you'd like to bring. If that doesn't work for you to lead a 6 or 12 week class, we also can encourage one offs. So, for example, Pi Day just happened. If a family wanted to instead maybe lead an hour and a half or 2 hour Pi Day special event, and maybe you're going to teach them how to make a apple pie, and then maybe they're going to do some, I don't know, online games together about Pi Day or whatever it is, you could do that instead. I know last semester a parent did Halloween activities that was really great. So those kind of ideas are out there for you. The end of the year, we really like to do things, or at the end of the semester, we really want to build up things like a science fair. We last year did a talent show that we're calling a STEAM fair this year, which is a showcase. And it can be things they did within their co-op or outside in their own activities that they can show off. So last year, two parents who weren't teaching during the semester went and just facilitated that for us and led that, just like we're leading this right now. And they didn't really have to do much. They just had to kind of help the kids to fill into that talent show virtually online. We're also building up more on the parent community. So we'd love to next year maybe add in maybe a parent book club or something like that, more parent events that don't come from GHF, but maybe there's something that's a little bit more relational that you'd like to be part of. So there's those opportunities to lead something like that. And then Cindy, we had a couple others. Oh, the virtual field trips. So there's a lot of docents, especially at the Smithsonian and different departments, who have been hosting closed community field trips for us. And what that means is that we've organized a specific time with the docent and just held it for our co-op kids. So it wasn't strangers or kids or people that we didn't know. It was all our community. You may have seen sometimes we open that up to the bigger GHF community if we need a few more participants. But that's been really great too. And so one parent I know right now is doing that instead of leading a class. They're doing an amazing job organizing those for us. And so there's different things that we can do. Again, taking those roles is really great. And then leadership, so again, We're trying to provide opportunities, especially for our older kiddos, that might look great on their transcripts and build that leadership experience. So I would love to see somebody, for example, who might want to lead a teen student council or some kind of teen organization where maybe helps them to facilitate, a co-op game day or something like that. So those kind of opportunities are things that are really fluid for ways that you can take an active role in the co-op. Yeah. All right. Did I cover all that, Sydney?
I think so. I think I got it all.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
So we are, of course, wrapping up spring right now, but we are beginning to plan for fall, and so we have dates planned for that, and that is what our registration period is open for now. So the important dates right now are that we are beginning on September 7th, which I know feels like it's really far away, but we are planning for it, and I know that some of you, I'm sure, are too. So our registration is open. It'll be open now through that August 1st. And then after you go through that, the family application, Lisa would then reach out to you with the background check. And once that's all set, we would then have you start filling out your class proposal, which is just a Google form where you share your idea for your class, the dates that you'd like to do it on, whether you want to do a 6-week or a 12-week or it's a different sort of schedule. That would be due on August 17th. And that gives us time to go through everything, ask any questions we need to, make sure everyone's schedule lines up. And then the class signups, which is when we would be sharing the full class bulletin with all the members, would begin on August 24th. So we would have some time for sign up, and then classes would start just about 2 weeks after that on the 7th.
Yeah. Is that our last slide? Yeah, one
Which
last thing I wanted to, I'm not sure if we answered this, and I apologize if it's redundant, but people might ask, when do we have to hold classes or events? And I wanted to just share this. So right now, because we had both years, I think we've had about 40 enrolled families, maybe between 20 and 30 per semester who are active. With this size right now, what we're trying to do is focus most of our activities in the States, because that's where the majority of our learners are right now, in Canada. I apologize, Canada. Between the East Coast time and the West Coast time. So most of our classes tend to either line up where they begin more in the afternoon in the East Coast, which becomes the morning on the West Coast, and that just gets more of our learners to fill into the classes. And then we do have like families in Hawaii, and I know there's a lot of interest abroad and internationally too, and we welcome those families as well, and we welcome after schoolers. So we are starting to see more weekend classes. We have a few right now, and you're welcome to hold them at other times. The caveat is that if you teach a class in a time that's a little bit different, you may just not have as many learners who are available to sign up for your class. So as we grow, I expect those offerings to grow as well. And then what we try to do is we try not to have two classes at exactly the same time. And the reason is because we do allow learners to jump grade level where appropriate. And so some learners might fit really well with kiddos in that third, fourth grade Minecraft challenges, but also want to take maybe a seventh, eighth grade kind of focused game design or Python or something like that. And so we try to stagger those. And so we ask families to let us know and kind of play with that schedule to make it work for everybody. So it's part of that big flexibility. And now I'd like to just open it up if for any questions, because I know this is a lot to conceptualize virtually. This is the family application. I haven't actually set up the registration fee. I will do that through Mighty Networks this weekend. And so the sooner you do register, and even if you don't have like your whole game plan for what you might want to teach, but you want to reserve that topic and that grade level, the sooner you do this is better. So for example, if we had two parents who both wanted to teach Python in the junior high level, the first one to kind of get there that expresses that would probably be the one that we would, encourage for that particular semester, unless they're co-teaching. So those are reasons why you might want to jump in earlier rather than later. Okay, and then yeah, and then I'm always available, and so is Sydney, to answer questions. So these are our information pieces. And what can we answer for people? I want to open this up. So please feel free to unmute if you have a question. Yeah, great question, Emma. So Emma's asking if there's an opportunity to attend a class or event before leading a class. And then I didn't see the rest of that. There might have been more to that. Um, I got the short version because it popped up in front of me. The answer to that is kind of. So we're really careful about making sure that any access to our kiddos, somebody has already gone through the background check first and gone through that process. However, the virtual co-op, the virtual field trips. Sydney, are we done right now with the scheduled field trips for the semester?
There's one more.
Okay. So we'll check with that parent, but if there's one more field trip, those generally we have open to the GHF community before. So while that won't give you an exact experience, that might be a really great way for your learner to come and jump in and just kind of see what happens in there. Generally, the docent will teach, and then I think, Sydney, are they still doing it the way I last saw it, where the kiddos are able to do chat and then able to take mute off and speak or do the polling or whatever that looks like?
Yeah, it's been a little bit different,
Okay.
depending on who's leading it. But yeah, I've seen chat and also opening up your mic is fine too on all of them.
Yeah. And I should add, the hard thing about jumping into a class is that all of our classes look completely different because all of our parents teach a little bit differently. And so, depending on what you jump into, it might look different next semester, next year, too. So, it's a little different than, say, going to maybe like an AOPS class that might be more similar with similar curriculum from a semester to semester. But that is a question that people have asked. And then the other thing too is if you fill out your background check and do all those pieces sooner rather than later, anything that a parent wants to pop up during the summer, even before the next school year, I always invite anybody who's already gone through the process for next year to be a part of. And that includes if you want to organize something as a new family, some kind of one off or some kind of summer get together or something like that. So as soon as you fill this out, you're welcome to kind of, what's the opposite of grandfathering in, right? You're able to kind of get that early access to be able to add any kind of those pieces together with us too. So sometimes it hasn't been as popular in the summer yet, but sometimes our co-op families will want to throw something in the summer, and then of course everybody would be invited. Hope that helps a little bit. Yeah. Emma, did that answer part of that question or all of that question? Um, yeah, great question. Okay, so we actually started to open the first and second grades. We started with third grade because, of course, it's Zoom, and weren't sure how, our kindergartners and that. And when I say kindergartners, I mean more like the age kindergartners, how they do on Zoom. And then we do have some families with first and second graders, and so you're welcome to do that. Right now, we don't have as many first and second graders. And when we say that again, that's very open to anyone over the age of 5. Um, so if you were teaching that, that would be really great. I would recommend even maybe teaching half-hour classes or something like that. The more families that we have at that level, the more we can fill those classes. We certainly, a kiddo who is 6, who's ready to join in the third and fourth grade classes, that's perfectly fine if that's their peer community and they can share in that kind of relational connection with those slightly older kiddos. And we do know a lot of kids are socially and emotionally and gravitate and form close friendships with younger and older learners. So that's why we're flexible on that. Yeah. Any other questions? Also, the 6-year-old, by the way, would be welcome to those virtual field trips too. To the extent that you might want to be nearby just to help them with, mute or whatever that is. That's perfectly fine. However, you want to scaffold that for them. And then if a teacher feels like you need that the child needs a little bit more scaffolding, they'll just reach out to you and talk to you about that and say, hey, maybe, if you can just be in the background during that, that'd be great. Technically, we do ask that all parents be nearby when the kids are on, just to make sure that all kids aren't having those troubles with those pieces. But once kids kind of get used to it, I think most of them are pretty self-driven in their classes. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Perfect. I would love to see that first, second, kind of grade level grow a little more. I think we've had some really great things in the past. I think we had a social emotional, was it superpowers, something like that, Sydney, right? Which was a
Yeah, I
really,
think there was a yoga class for the younger kids
yeah,
too.
yeah.
I can't remember, but I've had some younger kids in the Minecraft class too. So I think it just really depends what your 6-year-old is interested in and what they're ready for.
Yeah. And again, I have radically accelerated kiddos, and my 20-year-old who's in law school always gravitated towards, and not just that he wanted to be with older kiddos, but that he formed very strong friendships that were mutually, you know, celebrated with the older kiddos. And so I understand that asynchronicity, and I also understand older kiddos who are really interested in something that's a little bit more playful and fun that might be kind of geared towards a younger level. So that's why we're really open to that. If a child wants to access a quote, older class, we just ask that the teacher parent give permission, and so far they all have. And then I'll just approve that as well. And the only time we really see that might be an issue is, say they're reading Fahrenheit 451 or something like that at the higher level. We probably wouldn't want like a 9-year-old in that class necessarily, but that hasn't come up yet at all. Yeah. Anything else? Well, great. Okay, so we're here for another couple minutes. If a question suddenly pops up, feel free. Let's see, did I hit everything so far? Yeah, I am always accessible by email. I do have a GHF email as a board member, so my email's right here. Sydney shares hers too, and she's been really great. If there's anything at all that we can do for you, please let me know. If you do fill out the family application, you'll hear from me very quickly, in which I'll welcome you, and we'll start that next process. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, thank you so much for spending time with us. We're so excited about this. The co-op is really very innovative. We've just spoken at William and Mary, presenting this to the 2E conference. I've just been invited to share about our co-op to the World Council of Gifted and Talented Children in Brazil this summer. I'm sorry, Portugal this summer. And so, it's really this innovative, fun community for us to, kind of grow these ideas of how we can reach our families and our communities. So we hope you'll join us for sure. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. So I'm going to stop recording.